deck was absolutely awesome for me. A near 80% win rate, up to 8th in the world with an Infinity Ultron Ancient One deck. This is the list cooked up by Smiles, a very, very strong Victoria hand-based list that is using the ability of the Ancient One to copy ongoing abilities in order to either have multiple Victoria hands or multiple speeds on the board if you need a lot of power in one lane. Now, the V-hand stuff is a pretty obvious synergy that the Ancient One pretty clearly is intended to have, but this is also a deck that leans into created cards via Quinjet. Now, you are going to be doing some creating of one drops, but you'll notice that there's no Kate Bishop in here, in part because our hand would be too full, and since we are a Quinjet deck, we actually want the things that cost a little bit more so we can get enough value out of Quinjet for it to actually make sense. The 2s that come out of Infinity Ultron are extremely powerful when they cost 1. It's basically like generating 2 demons most of the time. Sometimes it's even bigger than that. You of course have Victoria Hand, which when you frigga her, she's going to end up costing 1 off of a Quinjet, which is a very powerful thing to do. And sometimes the thing you end up picking up off of a Mirage will also end up costing enough that Quinjet justifies its spot in the deck. Luna Snow has been making a major impact across the metagame recently, and here she is doing actually a fairly similar thing to what she was doing in the turn 4 Sarah deck that I highlighted among 3 decks yesterday, which is getting your 5 drop out on 4. Infinity Ultron is a powerful card, but it's much more powerful if you're able to put it out on turn 4. This also means that there's a lot of conflict between your top end and the rest of your top end. Very often, you will have to choose 2 out of 3 of Misery, AV, or Infinity Ultron. Often, it can be correct to go Misery. That's the one that's pretty much locked in as like it's very rarely wrong for you to be doing this unless you don't have the hood. And then you end up figuring out which of the other 2 you want to do. Misery Hood is still a priority in this list. At 4/9, she is an absolute monster all on her own. Just phenomenal stats. And I think that's the thing that this deck has as an advantage right now, which is there's just a lot of free, incidentally good bodies in here. The Ancient One, incidentally a 3/5, sometimes really significant upside. Speed, incidentally like a 3/7, sometimes really significant upside. And then you have all of these other cards that are just like solidly pretty good. And then you use the synergy between those cards, all of which are pretty good on rate, and then get more than the sum of the parts from a deck where the sum of the parts are actually quite solid cards to begin with. Now, this deck does not have a lot of interaction in it. You'll notice that the only real interaction we have is Shadow King, and he's a lot more soft interaction than he is hard interaction, which means that you have to focus on using your points as removal. Now, what do I mean by that? I think this is a concept that I've been meaning to dive into in a real way for a while, but I think it's something everyone kind of intuitively grasps. If I have 20 points at a location and you have 25 points at a location, I did not effectively play those 20 points. They don't exist. They did not help me win that location. That is what using your points as removal is. It means figuring out how to get yourself in situations where your extremely efficient point output, and it is extremely efficient, serves to invalidate the things your opponent is trying to do. When your opponent is trying to do things and you are doing bigger and more efficient things, then you're going to come out on top. Shadow King does double duty here. He stops a lot of the stuff that could reasonably go over the top of you, and he resets whatever you hit with the AV to its original power. This can be quite useful. When we talk about this deck in terms of highly efficient points packages, the Hood and Misery are sort of at the top of the list of that. The Hood has been a card that if you can get the value out of it and then destroy the body is already good enough. Misery basically tailor-made for this in that it doubles the body and you also don't have to deal with the Hood on the board. 2 demons is better than 1. 0 points on the board is better than -3. This is the foundation of your efficient points package, and that is what allows the rest of this deck to function. The rest of this deck is not necessarily built around this, but this is definitely like a backbone interaction for any Victoria hand deck. And a large part of why they work in general is that their floor is so high thanks to the power of Hood Misery. This deck is built a little bit around Quinjet, and I say that because a lot of other Hood Misery type decks with V-Hand are doing like Kate Bishop stuff. They're leaning into the ones and all of that, and there's enough Killmongers around here that I'm not feeling wonderful about that. Now, granted, it's not like Quinjet is great at a Killmonger either, but it's the kind of thing where they're not really going to Killmonger you early because they're always going to save it for the hoods much later, and you just have to be aware of that and play around that kind of stuff and just actually have the ability to deal with it. And Quinjet is just going to be able to get you the ability to play a bunch of things like they are ones, but not be as vulnerable to Killmonger, which is a large part of what I like about what it adds to the deck. So as paradoxical as it may seem, it's actually pretty good against those turn 6 Killmonger decks. Because, frankly, if they're Killmongering your Quinjet, well, then you are free to play those demons. There's a lot of utility to Mirage, but the basic one is you just need cards to benefit from Victoria Hand. You're playing Victoria Hand Ancient One. You are going to be in situations where you don't have enough cards that benefit from the buff to make it worth doing that. And so this is a card that adds cards to your hand. Hopefully, again, there's stuff that makes Quinjet relevant a lot of the time, like a 2 off of this with a good body is really sick if you're Quinjetting. That kind of stuff is really relevant because, again, can't get Killmongered, carries all the buffs. One of the things that I don't like about the typical versions of this deck is that extreme weakness to Killmonger. Hopefully, it'll be the last time I mention it this video, but it is a big thing that informs the thinking here, I think, or at least for me, it's a thing that informs how much I like the deck list, because I do consider, like, you just die to Invisible Woman Killmonger to be, like, a genuine flaw of the normal builds. This is a deck that gives you the ability to play through Killmongers and play around Killmongers by virtue of this card not being Kate Bishop. Shadow King is just very good. He plays offense and defense here. Offensively, he's going to get rid of a lot of the additional green power in the metagame. There are plenty of things that he can reasonably hit. He's not going to sit here and bring you back into metagames against combo decks, though. Like, combo decks are still mostly going to beat you. Sometimes you'll be able to get a good Shadow King off against a move bounce player. A lot of the time, you'll need to get lucky still for him to be good enough to let you play those games, whereas the hard tech versions, some of them can be a little bit more successful, but he is a very relevant card. He only costs 2, and he also resets whatever it is you got off of AV to its full power. Very strong ability. Victoria Hand is quite a powerful card generally, and as a points package is a build around that has gained bigger prominence recently. I know I said that the core of this deck is Hood Misery, and honestly, I do believe that to be true. This is not necessarily more of a Hood Misery deck than it is a V-Hand deck, but I kind of don't think it would be nearly as good without Hood Misery, and Hood Misery is sort of applicable across a bunch of other stuff, where V-Hand, I hesitate to call her Plan B, because it's not like she's Plan B, she's still Plan A here, but it's just like, oh, she's pretty good. Like, she's just pretty good. If you get your copies going, you V-Hand a Frigga. There's some really cool stuff you can do if you get enough energy, like V-Hand or Friggaing a V-Hand and then playing the other V-Hand out and then Miserying the Frigga. If you do that in the right order, you'll get a third V-Hand. All that kind of stuff is, like, genuinely pretty sick. There's a bunch of really cool stuff that this card enables, and mostly you are actually, as far as I can tell, not really in the business of playing Tau Mandala on this card. It can be useful, but I don't think it always is, in large part because A, very expected, and B, doing it on a speed, it's not necessarily better. V-Hand is more your go wide, speed is more your go tall, but this deck is already actually very good at go wide and not as good at go tall. So I find doing it on speed actually to be a little bit more successful, weirdly. As I start this segment, I realize that the phrasing of my last sentence was perhaps not ideal. I do not endorse any method of drug consumption. Now, on to the card speed. This is a very interesting card in this deck, and it requires you to think about your positioning in large part because of Tau Mandala. You don't really want two ongoings in the same lane as each other unless you are fully giving up on ever doing a Tau Mandala, which that can happen. But generally speaking, Quinjet goes in one lane, Vihan goes in one lane, this guy goes in a different lane. He's just a big three, and if you Tau Mandala his ability, you're often giving like, +8, +10 to the rest of the cards in the lane if you count both of them. So like +4, +4, +5, +5. It's a pretty solid thing to do, and it's still pretty unexpected. Speaking of the Ancient One, she's mostly just a 3/5 with some potential upside. Obviously, the Tau Mandala going to 2 cost has made this a stronger deck, in my humble opinion. It allows the deck to discount it with Quinjet to 1, which is really impactful. A lot of the times on final turns of the game, you'll be like messing around with various things that maybe you're 1 energy off, you have the ability to fit 1 energy into your curve. That happens a lot more than the ability to fit 2 energy in, and it just sort of consistently happens. Like, you have Luna Snow in this deck. There's just a lot of 1 energy floating around, I feel like, between Quinjet and Luna Snow, and this means that you are going to be able to play this card a decent amount of the time. The threat of it is powerful. It works, since it's a spell, it'll work through on Alioth. There's a lot of cool stuff that this card gives you access to, and I think it's a very valid part of this list. At this point, with the other 3s that are typically elite being in awkward positions, Gladiator sells a lot of games, Copycat doesn't have as many great targets as she used to, and of course, Red Guardian got nerfed. I'm not saying she's better than all 3 of those cards. I just think that she's a lot more justifiable in that context here. Luna Snow's recent breakout, I think, is the right way to term it. Like, this card has been in so many things recently, and I think it's in large part due to people discovering her through decks like this, where they were like, I'm Luna Snowing into Infinity Ultron. What happens if I start Luna Snowing into other 5s? And that has been a powerful, decent strategy, and she's just shown up in a lot of different places. She's a very common card to see, and I think it's also worth pointing out, once again, this has not necessarily exactly coincided with a bunch of the other 3 drops, especially Red Guardian, getting a little bit worse. Red Guardianing the Luna Snow thing, really damn bad. Another thing that has made Luna Snow more popular that doesn't apply to this deck is Merlin, because Merlin is able to interact very profitably with extra bodies on the board. That is not something we have access to. We're playing honest Luna Snow over here. And what she is doing is mostly getting us to IU or to an earlier Hood Misery turn, all of that stuff. Even with her in the deck, you are still going to have a pretty jammed up top end of your curve, so you are going to have to make some hard choices some of the time. I love AV. I realize that in a deck like this, he's not at his best. This is not a deck with like a bunch of high impact tech cards. This is not a deck where you are overwhelmingly constrained on energy. And this is not a deck where you have like a million amazing hits on him. I totally understand that. I still love him. 4/7 base, massive upside on the ability. You can take away any downside of the ability, but you just get free cards, and that increases your range, and you care a lot about your range because your range is your removal in this deck. We talked about it in the intro here. Your range is your removal. It's the important part of the deck. Having the ability to get those extra points to like bleed those out, though, that matters a lot. Misery is kind of actually goated. Like, just 4/9, double your hoods. There's nothing bad you can say about this card. She is just an absolute beast. I had someone Red Guardian my hood just so I couldn't Misery it. Like, that's how good this card is right now. I'm not going to say Misery is one of the best cards in the game, but back in, I think, 2018, there was a card in Magic the Gathering called Treasure Map. And Day9, one of my favorite content creators of all time, described it as jank glue. What it did was go in basically every meme deck, basically every like sub-tier deck, and just make all of them better because of the text that it had that just sort of inherently made the decks a little bit more consistent, gave them a little bit more upside. That is where I feel Misery is at, except this is a very good deck, and it's also the kind of thing that you'll see in like worse decks as well. This is a card that I would call a metagame staple. This is just a very, very powerful card. Hood Misery, that interaction specifically, is a large portion of its power, like probably 70 to 80% of it. So keep an eye on that if anything like that gets changed. But this is that, those 2 cards are just absurdly strong. That's just how it is. Infinity Ultron is a pretty solid card. A lot of what I like about him is that with Quinjet, he's giving you 2s that cost 1, which makes you less vulnerable to Killmonger. The rest of what I like about him is that he's just pretty big and pretty good. Keep in mind that if you're looking at your top end, the priority to me goes Hood Misery, then Infinity Ultron, then AV. Typically, that's how I will approach a lot of this stuff. One of the things that can change that calculus is if your hand is too full and you actually really need to draw something, Infinity Ultron and Hood Misery both run the risk of clogging it up. Again, I typically prioritize Hood Misery before Infinity Ultron. He's okay. I'm not necessarily 100% convinced that this deck wouldn't be better with like a Shang-Chi or a Juggernaut in there instead. It's entirely possible, but I do like what he brings to the deck in terms of ceiling. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for watching. You might have noticed that I'm a little more HD today. I was requested not to name the person, but a very generous viewer helped me upgrade both my mic and my camera, so I hope that you are enjoying what you see. Unfortunately, now that we're in HD, everyone can see how bad the paint job is behind me, so I've probably got to get on that. Thank you so much for watching. We're about to jump into some gameplay. Stick around if you'd like to watch it. I've been KMBest. You've been phenomenal. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. What's Iris playing? My goat. I don't know why I expected anything else. With Prio, I'm actually fairly tempted to just Shadow King here. I don't know if he gets anything else that's better than... I guess I'm getting Sarad. Ha ha! Let's go! I was like, there's not enough power in that deck. And there wasn't enough power in that deck. I was kind of afraid of something that enabled, like, triple claw here, but the rogue being there made that less likely. 6 or 5/8? I think it's quite good as is. I don't know, that seems like a mild overreaction to me. Not like the biggest overreaction of all time, but like it's an overreaction, I think. Bruce Banner? Holy hell. Very nice. RIP to my mandala, but I mean, geez. Gotta be honest, I'm kind of rooting for them. All right, which ones are these? Card from hand and lowest power enemy. All right. Got me. So we win then. Infinity Space Stone putting the work in because they're Eliathing the middle. Yes, Infinity Space Stone. Yeah. We did such little. You'd feel like it'd be lower. Don't love a symbiote. Am generally interested in a hood. Well, someone's got a Killmonger. Oh, for fuck's sake. Now, the Killmonger, pretty expected here. Okay, we're good. Woo! The Juggernaut was scary. Erotic Sasquatch. Dude, I wish I knew how to make that happen for me. How do I get into erotic Sasquatch mode? Fuck. So cool. Holy shit. What a beast. Yeah, I might explode. You might make me explode, chat. How does that make you feel? How does that make you feel? Might make me explode, dog. You might make me bust. Holding this, I'm gonna try to get something cool out of it. Has there been consensus on Clea as a worthy purchase? I wouldn't say there's been consensus, no. GGKM just before this? I take it you're the guy who just beat me? You know, we've played a lot of people today. Only you have stopped by. I wonder why that is. Oh, man. Correct? Fascinating. You know how many new cards dropping Tuesday in Series 4 packs? I don't. I swear to God, if this misery shows up and fucks me, I'm gonna be absolutely devastated. Like a full hand. How could that possibly happen? Right? Gonna move them all left? We can't. None of these cards can move right now. Or at least the Human Torch can't. Ha-ha! Time to suck it, Mr. Human Torch. You're going back down to 4. Yeah, buddy. An additional 10 if it goes over here. Good. Is there a way to make it so you can see what turn it is? The chat blocks it. I'm not sure. You can mess around with some shit. First of all, I'm pretty sure I'm supposed to put this. Probably my fault in the first place, though. What a rip. I mean, that's just amazing. That's really bad. Hopefully I get there 0 off the barrage. Indeed. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm copying Doom. If I copy the Taskmaster, it'll still do the set thing. We needed that there to trump their doom. Oh, shit. Died. Oh? They might have fucked it. They did fuck it. They had us. If they hadn't gone for that polymorph, they would have beaten us. Because that had me. I was close. I'm gonna copy that, I think. Yeah, our ass is in the jackpot now. I was gonna copy that. I'm afraid of getting jugged on, but I guess that would happen regardless. I'm afraid of El Juggerino. That would just kind of all... I think it's just got to be that. Okay, so good news. Minus 1,000,000 points. Love me a Shadow King, my only actual tech card.